Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to today's sermon on achieving happiness in the cloud. It feels more like a pulpit than it does a podium, so looks like we'll have to move around a little bit. Thanks for attending today's session on best practices with AWS. We're going to be covering a number of different topics, starting with consulting. And then we're also going to cover some of our best practices for partnering with AWS in our public sector business and how some of our partners are leveraging Gov Cloud. And then following that, Scott Barneson is going to talk about best practices if you're an ISV, and then he's also going to be joined with Infor to discuss their experiences in partnering with AWS. So before we get started, just to differentiate, our program is broken down really into two different buckets, and the programs are vastly different depending on which one you're classified as. But the first one is the consulting partner bucket, which is what I'm going to talk about. Consulting partners are companies that largely derive their revenue from the sale of consulting services, although we are seeing a bit of a switch in that some of these companies are rolling out annuity streams of revenue and product-oriented offerings that I'm going to talk about as well. Technology providers are those companies that derive the majority of their revenue from the sale of software licensing, whether that's a utility model or whether that's a bring-your-own license on AWS. So there's 4 tiers of partners in the AWS network. And before I go through this, how many folks are actually in the APN right now? Because I know we covered some of this in the last session, so maybe 50%. I'll cover this pretty quickly. A registered partner, if you don't know the APN, the Amazon Partner Network, there's a portal out there. You can do a search on the APN. If you're not registered with the APN, I would highly suggest you go out there. There's no cost to register your company, and there's a wealth of information available once you do that. Once our partners start to engage with us a little bit more, and they've got a couple implementations under their belt that we've verified and that we've had some folks go through our certification and accreditation courses, then they can move up to our standard level. After the standard level, we have a smaller subset of our partners that have qualified for our advanced level. This is where we have at least 5 folks from your technical teams as well as from your business teams that have gone through sales training as well as through technical training. And then at the highest level, we have our premier consulting partners, and that's a very select group of partners each year that we choose. It's a yearly designation, and once you've achieved both advanced and partner networks, you'll start to interact with more of our field teams. So I manage our enterprise and our territory field teams, and our job is to help our partners put together business plans and interact with our sales teams so that we can help you take your offerings to market and partner with AWS in a much more seamless way. So when you think about our consulting partner ecosystem, you first have to think about our AWS platform. And starting from the bottom and going up, when you look at our 10 regions and multiple availability zones around the world, there's many different ways that you can connect to those, either through direct connect or through virtual private clouds. And then sitting on top of all of that is our 3 core services, which is storage, compute, and database. And the way that you can configure those, there's an infinite number of possibilities. And our managed service providers and resellers are the ones that can come in and help you not only buy and provision all of our different products, but they can help you configure those networks and put those pieces together. Moving up the stack a little bit, traditional systems integrators are the ones that will help you figure out how to build those applications or migrate those applications. So if you're building a data warehouse, for example, a system integrator may help you migrate a large amount of data into our Redshift product and then help you select a business intelligence tool that you can run on top of Redshift and actually migrate and set up the dashboards and go through and do more of the traditional consulting types of projects. And then sitting on top of all of that are the different application services that will also tie our products together. So simple notification service, our simple workflow service, our elastic data pipeline. These are all things that make our products work better together. And our systems integrators also have management solutions that allow you to tie these things together so that you can deploy these and then manage these in a much more seamless way. And what's interesting here is that a lot of our systems integrators are actually building their own cloud management solutions, and we've also seen some acquisition. So this has become a differentiator for consulting companies, is to offer some of that management layer on top of their traditional offerings. So if you break down some of our infrastructure and our managed service providers a little bit further, managed services typically means that they're doing the monitoring of your applications once they're migrated into AWS. So if you have a custom application that requires specific events that you're monitoring or specific types of patching for OS updates, our managed service providers will do that for you and also provide first line and second line support as well as migration support. So if you're migrating a SharePoint site to AWS, what are the tools that you need to migrate? What are the things that our managed service providers can bring to the table? And this is something that our infrastructure providers focus on. Next one down is credential management. This is integration with Active Directory and LDAP, as well as how we do user provisioning and password management. So when the managed service provider, and you've essentially outsourced some of this to them, they'll figure out how to hook up all of those user management tools and manage the credentials and the issuance of those credentials. And the last one is billing, so custom billing solutions. A lot of times we see our enterprise clients will do custom workflows so that if a particular department wants to provision resources, there's maybe budget approval for those resources before they're provisioned. So a lot of our infrastructure providers have custom billing solutions that help them implement those types of workflows. More on the moving up the stack or some of the traditional system integration work, there's 4 areas where we see our partners focusing. The first one is enterprise applications. These are things like SAP and Oracle and SharePoint, and how those integrators help our customers migrate those workloads to AWS. The second is more of the consumer and traditional web applications. So this is enterprise content management, e-commerce, mobile applications, traditional 3-tier architectures. A lot of our consulting companies will obviously build these from scratch or migrate applications that our customers already have to AWS. The third category, which is probably our most popular and where I see the most entrance into our program, is around big data and HPC. So these are companies that focus from anywhere from genomic sequencing to smart metering to marketing analytics, or to helping financial institutions take advantage of Monte Carlo simulations and how to spin up HPC clusters and then manage those types of solutions long term. A lot of investment in this category. And the last one is backup and disaster recovery. This is more interesting to some of our smaller businesses and some of our consulting companies that focus in our territory sales segment, because these are companies that traditionally haven't been able to afford disaster recovery solutions. And with AWS, obviously, they can create a small footprint in the cloud, and companies like our consulting companies can help put together things like business continuity plans for companies that may not have been able to afford them before. So I'm going to go through 5 reasons. If you haven't built an AWS practice, or maybe you're in the process of just getting started, I'm going to give you 5 reasons that we're seeing as to why it's a compelling value proposition. I'm going to go through each of these, but one is it's still early. We're just starting to see massive enterprise adoption. I'm going to go through a couple data points there. The second is global reach. AWS offers smaller consulting partners the ability to do projects outside of the US that they may not have been able to do before, and I'll give you an example of that in a second. The next one is around managed solutions, and we feel that those are the future of professional services. These are solutions that combine software, infrastructure, and consulting into a monthly billing structure, so creating an annuity stream for our consulting partners. And the fourth is that AWS improves consulting teams' performance and how they deliver projects. I'm going to go through some examples of that as well. And then the last one is we're starting to see, now that our program's been in place for a couple years, we're starting to see some best practices that the folks in this room can take advantage of. So it's still early. And last year, we saw over $25 million go into our consulting partner ecosystem from venture capital companies. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, but that's spread out over a number of different companies. And what's interesting is I spent about 10 years building a number of different consulting practices, and there's been very few periods over the last 10 years where venture capitalists are putting money into consulting companies. And the reason that I believe that that's happening is because AWS offers our consulting partners the ability to create solutions that create an annuity stream of revenue. And I want to go through a couple examples of partners that are doing that. But this is a great data point, because obviously the venture capital community is where the smart money is, and now that we're seeing that go in, we're pretty proud of some of the investments that they've made. The second one is that IDC released a report last year that public cloud consulting, the value of public cloud consulting would be 10x of what traditional IT consulting professional services offer. So that's a great data point if you haven't started to build your AWS practice, the types of revenue and the types of trend that you can anticipate over the next 5 to 10 years as our enterprise customers migrate to AWS. So the last data point that I would give you is that companies like Dow Jones here in the US have publicly stated they do not want to be in the data center business. They are retiring their data centers, and they're migrating their enterprise and their entire infrastructure to AWS. Companies like Suncorp over in Australia, or Commonwealth Bank, these companies don't just do this in a couple months. This is a multi-year process, and they need help doing this. They're looking for companies that have defined methodologies and defined tools that will help them, and it represents a very large opportunity for our consulting partners. Global reach. So an example here is I was talking with one of our partners in New York City called Control Group. It's a small firm, and one of their specialties is the retail industry. And they have a client, Kate Spade, that wanted to do a test of a new digital store signage solution. And they decided that the first location they would test this solution was in Japan. The interesting thing is that Control Group never had to send a single person to Japan for the store's launch. They're able to coordinate with the store member teams to hang up and coordinate the digital signage, and then once those devices were connected, they could control everything from the US out of our Japan region. So this is just one example of how a company that may only have a couple hundred employees could start to deploy and do business in other countries because they have resources that they haven't had access to before. So we believe that AWS offers a global opportunity for a number of different consulting companies that may not have had these types of projects in the past. So I talked a little bit about managed solutions. I'm going to go through some examples. Cognizant is an example of a company that's built a solution called AssetServe. And AssetServe is a digital marketing platform whereby any Fortune 1000 company can manage all of their digital assets. So if you take a company like a General Motors or a Coca-Cola that has millions of different versions of their logos, super high resolution files, lots of storage, every time those logos get used in a different country, they have to go through approval processes and workflows. So if I'm taking a logo in the US and I need to translate that into Switzerland, there's different usage rights. They have a solution that they can come in and customize for any of those Fortune 1000 clients, how that works. They can manage the workflow and all the digital assets behind that. So they're bundling in the software, the services, and when they walk away, they have a solution that's in place at that client that's ongoing. So it's been a great revenue generator for them, and they've sold this into a number of their Fortune 100 accounts. Another example would be MarketShare. MarketShare is a company that focused in on marketing analytics. So if you're a CMO, you're spending millions and millions of dollars on TV, on print, on Twitter, social media. You don't always necessarily know how well that spend is doing, and they're grappling with how to measure all of these new advertising channels. MarketShare built a platform that allows them to ingest terabytes and even petabytes in some cases of information from Nielsen, from all of the different suppliers that these companies get their data from, as well as all of the sales data from these companies, and able to create dashboards over the course of a couple months so that CMOs now can see exactly if I spend this much money here, I can expect this much more in sales. They've been tremendously successful because they built a platform at AWS that allows them to go in and customize this in a matter of months, where these are projects that might take over a course of a year prior to that. Another example is Sapient Corporation. They've released a platform called Engage Now in partnership with Adobe. This is a customer engagement platform that allows them to launch microsites over the course of a couple days. So they can go in for a couple different campaigns and launch 50 to 60 new product microsites, integrated advertising with that, and then integrated analytics to see how effective those microsites are. Again, combining software, services, and infrastructure into a monthly recurring revenue stream for each of these companies. The fourth is that AWS improves margins and your team's performance. So if you think about, this is an example of a three-tier architecture. It probably looks complicated from back there, but let's say that this is Joomla, which is a content management package, and let's say you're a firm that specializes in that. You may have different types of projects where maybe on this project the company prefers that you're going to use Tomcat as the web server. Maybe this company says we use IIS, and there's probably small little customizations. Every time you sell one of these projects, there's a period of time where you have your infrastructure team come in to set up your project environment or the client environment. This is something that now can be templatized with CloudFormation, which is our scripting language. So you literally can have 10 different versions of code which correlate to 10 different types of projects. So if you're somebody that does interwoven, or maybe it's SharePoint, and you do the same thing over and over, you don't have to necessarily spend 2 weeks to get your infrastructure sped up. Your project teams can spend a couple minutes checking out the script that they need for this type of project, and they're up and running. And then it's up to you to decide how you charge for that, right? Because most of those costs are baked into your SOWs, so you can decide whether you charge for it as a service or you can decide whether that's included in a monthly offering. It makes teams very, very efficient. The fifth is that best practices are emerging. So the companies I've seen be the most successful are the ones that exploit the thing that they're best at. I've seen consulting companies that have a background in HIPAA compliance go out and build patient data management systems because they're able to have all the knowledge, and they're also able to bring the technical expertise to build an architecture that's HIPAA compliant. I've seen companies do this that specialize in smart metering and putting together a smart meter architecture and taking that to utilities companies and other types of energy companies. We've seen this in big data, somebody like MarketShare that has deep expertise in doing analytics for CMOs and creating these dashboards. These are the things that will get you started on AWS so that you can expand into other areas. Understanding AWS Economics. So take an example of Cognizant's Asset Serve. If I go in and I sell Asset Serve and I know that at a minimum I've always got a load that requires me to have 3 instances running, and I know that when I set up a year-long contract, I can pre-buy those 3 instances, and I can start to save some money behind the scenes and figure out if I've got 10, 15 clients, how might I apply either reserved instances or buy instances from the marketplace that's going to further reduce my cost so that I can decide how I'm going to pass those margins on to my clients or how I'm going to run my business. So there's a lot of opportunity to get pretty granular with our economics. The third rather, is consider an MSP strategy. So there's a lot of companies out there with less than 100 folks that are providing managed services to Fortune 500 companies, and they're doing a great job. Because with AWS, you don't necessarily have to have an army of folks that's stationed in data centers doing racking and stacking and management of infrastructure. You can have a team of 10 people operating 24/7, and you can manage an entire virtual data center for your clients. So this is an area where it hasn't been a strategic advantage for a lot of consulting companies, but it's becoming one because they're able to do something that they haven't been able to do before in providing managed services. I talked a lot about sort of the idea of solution frameworks. If you have an area of expertise or a niche, and you can design a product and you have the ability to bring in the software and combine the services with that, either using our marketplace, which we just talked about, this is a great opportunity to create an annuity stream of revenue for your company. Build a methodology in select supporting tools. So I'm starting to see companies develop tools that will stub out code. So they'll take a legacy application, they'll analyze it, and they'll start to stub out code that makes it easy to migrate to AWS. There's forklifting tools that are being developed. So as you think about where your focus is going to be, think about the tools that can make you more efficient in helping your clients migrate to AWS. This is a big emerging area for us right now. And the last one is think big, which is you might be able to sell an assessment or an initial engagement to help the company figure out what's the value of cloud, but there's a lot of other phases after that. And I want to go through a couple examples of how to think big. So when I talk about that first project, maybe it's an assessment. Maybe it's a proof of concept where a company simply wants to understand if I move my intranet or maybe a web application, I want to get experience with AWS. I want to actually see what the savings are. And that's usually something that a company will sell. We see these in the range of $50,000 to $100,000 per project, sort of fixed price, so the client feels a little bit secure in that first project. That usually leads to the selection of another application that gets migrated. So if they didn't migrate their intranet, they may pick another simple application or a database type application to migrate. And while they're doing that, they start to think about the implications to their organization. So how does my approval process change? What's my service catalog? So if I want to limit the number of instance types I offer an IT organization and set up that catalog, or have a workflow that says Department A can only have so much ability to run up their bill, or whatever those limitations or governance guidelines are, they'll start to design those processes around that first project. And those are usually in the ranges of $100,000 to $250,000, depending on the size of the company. That usually leads to a divisional pilot. So once they have a governance framework in place, once they've got experience migrating an initial application, they'll start to systematically look at 20, 30, 40 applications to migrate and kind of have a factory process for doing that. And they'll usually pick a division of a company to start and go through that to set up the governance model that they designed. And at that point, that's where the projects start to get where you're in 6 months or a year-long projects, and obviously much more sizable. And then ultimately, the client gets to the point where they're going through an entire data center migration, and they know that their goal is to be out of the data center business. And this is really where the big opportunity lies for our consulting partners. So what are some examples of folks that are doing this? Wipro worked with a very large energy company. This is traditional consulting where you can't say the company's name, you're not allowed, so you say large energy company. That helped this company put together project teams. So imagine hundreds of project teams around the world that need to spin up resources and spin down resources. You have to coordinate and centralize the requests for all of these teams. So Wipro helped them put in place not only a governance model, but a tool set for IT service management, as well as all the governance around the request process, and then dashboards for how they manage all these deployments. And they were able to get their deployment times down to hours for new environments for their projects. Edifixio worked with Schneider Electric. They're a consulting partner out of the UK that helped Schneider migrate the initial 15 intranet applications that they brought onto AWS. And they also helped Schneider put together their disaster recovery plan for a couple locations over in the UK, where they previously did not have one. Capgemini worked with Greyhound. Greyhound has a division. It's a small shipping package delivery business in the US and Canada. And Capgemini put together a shipping portal that also serves not only their internal agents, but also the customers using the service. And they have a 3-year agreement in place to not only build this application, which is now live, but to provide all of the managed services for Greyhound going forward. Qantas worked with Full360, one of our firms that specializes in business intelligence. They put together a series of dashboards for flight attendants to be able to see exactly who you are when you're coming onto the plane, as well as things that may have happened so they can customize their service to you. So this is now being used by 1,000 different agents around the world. So if you just happen to obtain gold status on the previous flight, they may greet you and congratulate you on attaining that gold status on the next flight. So it's really improving the quality of their customer care during these flights. RunEDA is a company that worked with Shire to put in place a global framework for deploying business objects, SAP, on AWS. And they're able to get that deployment down into a couple weeks as they deploy new versions of that data warehouse around the globe. So to sum up, how do you get started in our consulting program? One is register with the APN if you haven't done that yet. If you have registered, then obviously please feel free to reach out to me after our presentation if you're not in touch with one of our partner development managers and not working with us now. Please get accredited for professional and technical certification. So all of this is on the APN. It's free of charge. They're online courses. Highly encourage both your technical and your sales teams to go through and get their accreditations, which help you move up the stack and obviously more deeply engage with AWS. So pick the areas of focus and write a business plan. If you decide that you do have an expertise in HIPAA compliance or marketing analytics or whatever that is, write a business plan around it, and we'll help you with that. Figure out who you're going to go to first. What existing clients might we go in and propose an initial proof of concept with? If you haven't done so, you can build a proof of concept. We do have a free tier. So if you're a smaller consulting organization, at least to get started and migrate your own website or intranet to AWS, there is no cost to do that simply by using our free tier to start to get experience with it. As I mentioned, you could migrate your own intranet to try to get experience with that. Or the other thing a lot of our companies are doing is when I talk about code refactoring, a lot of companies are building tools that help with the migration. So once you've done an initial migration, how can you create a meta model, or how can you create something that stubs out that code so that you have a jump start for your next set of applications? And that's something that can be bundled in with your statements of work to give you an advantage. And then lastly, if you haven't gone online, you can find all the information about our partner program here. And if you have any questions, we'll be up after the presentation. So thanks again. And at this point, I'll introduce Jeff Kratz from our public sector team.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, and good afternoon. I love the think big approach, especially as we start thinking about my customer and all of yours, the public sector entities, and the tremendous revenue opportunity that is there. But at first you may say, tremendous revenue opportunity? Jeff, we're talking about public sector. We're talking about government. We're talking about education. Revenue in these entities? And the answer is absolutely. And in fact, public sector is one of the fastest growing areas that we've seen for the channel. And it's ranging far and wide as governments go through massive transformations. And there really is no better time, if you haven't already got involved in public sector opportunities, now to start investing and testing your business into the public sector side. Governments actually are starting to go from laggards to really leaders facing unprecedented financial challenges and really turning to the cloud and turning to all of you for the practical solutions. Right now we have over 600 different government agencies running AWS, over 2,000 different education institutions that are using different parts of our cloud services, and is growing faster and faster and faster. Recovery.gov saved over $750,000 by moving over to AWS. NASA, JPL, who we heard from a year and a half ago at reInvent, how they leveraged AWS, saved over $1 million. Variety of different, not only federal government, but also local, municipal, education, K-12 through higher education, tapping into the power of cloud computing in a variety of different ways. Now, as we think about public sector and that revenue opportunity, we also recognize that it's a different sales model. And we're doing quite a bit to go ahead and help our partner community really capitalize on these opportunities. So whether you're a consulting partner driving systems integration, one of our partners, Dewberry, worked closely with our contracting office to not only get on GSA, Government Service Administration pricing, but also to go ahead and win a very large Western state GIS application. From the technology partners, whether that is Citrix or SAP, Junar, who's here in the local Bay Area, works closely with local and regional governments. They've really capitalized on the Cloud First mandate, on the Open Data Initiative, to help publish very large data sets for cities and counties so that other technologies can go ahead and leverage those, as well as citizens on mobile devices. To different managed service providers that are jumping on in, or what's really exciting to see is our different consulting and technology partners working together. Just about a month or so ago, Infor Alliance and ESRI got together to form a test drive. It was mentioned in one of the earlier sessions, where customers can go ahead and try the GIS application for a couple hours and give it a run. Infor Alliance providing their consulting expertise, ESRI with their global information system running on top of AWS, in a very exciting way for governments to go ahead and start looking at how cloud can be used within their organization. Now, those are just a few of the different ones, and here's a variety of different type of engagements that we see throughout all forms of public sector, from K-12 institutions, higher ed and research, national governments, provincial governments, if you are doing business, for instance, in Canada, state and counties. Variety of different workloads, from website hosting to disaster management, recovery, storage, backup, SharePoint on top of AWS, one of the fastest areas that we've seen grow, especially the channel capitalizing on government regulations in terms of how long that data needs to be stored and discovered, and then how do you trace when that data does get destroyed. Now, to support not only the couple examples that I have referenced, but these different ways that our partners today are engaging, we also recognize that we wanted to do things a little differently. We wanted to make sure that we had the resources and the programs within the Amazon Partner Network to support all of your efforts. So we've done things a little bit differently. One is that we have a government authorized partner program built on top of the Amazon Partner Network, which we find many partners as a best practice, capitalizing on not only attaining, but also driving differentiation when it comes into a contract and bid decision-making process. On that contract and bid process, we actually have a capture organization. And if you've ever had the delight of going through a government tender, it's usually this thick or sometimes thicker, we actually have an organization to help our partners respond to those tender notices. So if you're looking for the exact paragraph on FedRAMP compliance, we have that. And that organization works closely with our partners to have them help win the different tender notices that are being issued at the city, state, county, as well as federal level. Third is a best practice that we've seen many partners go ahead and leverage and take advantage of is our contracting office. There's a different way to go ahead and do business in government, and from a contracting perspective, we have individuals that work side by side with our partners to help get AWS and the partner's solution or services listed on a variety of different government contract vehicles. Those may be GSA contracts, the Western State Collective Agreement, a local municipality contracting office, and in fact, we actually promote those partners that are on different contracts up on our contract public sector site. So when customers are curious, who are the partners that are on specific contract vehicles so I don't have to go out to general tender, we actually list all of those up there. Our compliance team, and it was exciting to see some of the announcements this morning. Department of Defense went ahead and gave us provisional authorization for security levels 1 and 2 for all of our AWS regions. That's a big step if you're doing business in the defense and military side. Our compliance organization also works closely with our partner community to make sure that we are not only adhering to the government standards that are out there, but helping our partners understand what some of those compliance and regulations are. We have frequent webinars that we host. You can find the current listing on the Amazon Partner Network, where we talk about not only demystifying some of these topics, but also helping you understand where your solution set can go ahead and be applicable within the public sector organization. Last but absolutely not least, we have a very strong solution architects group who has office hours. So very similarly, maybe in college when you went by the professor's office and they were grading papers, some of our essays just hop on an open conference call bridge to answer questions, any types of questions that our channel has. Many of those questions come on in regards to Gov Cloud, which was mentioned just earlier. Now, to demystify one topic, if you're doing business in public sector, you don't need to only use Gov Cloud. We actually have a number of customers that are using US East, US West, using many of our regions outside of the United States for disaster management, recovery, storage, and backup. But many times there are very specific workloads, regulations, as well as requirements that the US government or the ecosystem that supports the US government needs to maintain. To do that, we have created a specialized region that's called US Gov Cloud that has a different process to go ahead and gain access to it. It's so that then partners and customers adhere to a variety of different regulations that are required to use this. So by default, if you were to launch up the AWS console and scan through regions, you by default would not see Gov Cloud in there. And this is why, because we want to make sure that we're not only adhering to these different requirements, but that we're walking through and helping our partner channel understand not only the compliance issues, but also how they can be leveraged. We've seen a very, very strong uptake during the last number of months with US Gov Cloud from our partner channel, variety of different development and testing solutions, as well as areas that they are growing very rapidly, given our recent FedRAMP authorization to operate that we were granted this past year. So these are just a couple of different areas. And again, one of the biggest areas that we've seen partners from a best practices perspective be successful in the marketplace with public sector is by capitalizing on their relationship with Amazon Partner Network. Again, kind of building on top of what Josh mentioned a second ago. The government authorization, great opportunity to go ahead and differentiate yourself from other channel partners pursuing the same opportunity. Understanding and delivering the solution on Gov Cloud. If you're doing business with the US federal government or within higher education, so for instance, if you are working with a physics department in a university that's receiving federal funding, there may be some requirements for that data and project to actually run in US Gov Cloud. Again, we're here to help support your efforts from a solutions architect's perspective, an authorization, as well as an education perspective. Additionally, we have very specific public sector events that we have, not only throughout the country, so if you're doing business in the state, local government, and education space, we have a roadshow going on right now, so they may be coming to your area soon. But we also have our fall public sector symposium, where we go ahead and have, within the Washington, D.C. area, usually fall. This year, actually, we moved it to June. We have 2,500 different government customers come for a couple of days to understand, hear from our partner community as well as from our staff in regards to the recent advancement and best practices. Last but not least is engaging our capture team. When I look at partners that have been successful responding to bid and tender notices, or those that have gone ahead and worked closely to get on government contracts, those partners that have engaged our capture and contracts team to not only lower the cost of doing business, we have a lot of the data that you'll need. We can help you walk through the process. Second of all, respond to those tender notices. Third, to go ahead and get actively engaged with our sales teams. Those partners that have done that very successfully have a high degree of winning the bids and landing some of this tremendous revenue opportunity that's out there. So these are just a few of the many best practices, different ways that we are uniquely bringing solutions and services to all of you to help you be more successful in the public sector side. Now, a key part within public sector is also our technology partners. And to go ahead and share a little bit more in regards to how our technology partners are being successful in the market, I'm going to ask Scott to come on up. Scott?
Thanks, Jeff. This is really great stuff. For anyone in the room who does business in the public sector, do yourself a favor. Remember that face. Ambush him. Don't let him get out of the room. Hold him down until he gives you a business card. We can really help. We can help across the consulting partner businesses, across public sector, and now we're going to talk about the technology partner ecosystem. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes, so hopefully you can endure that much of my voice. And then we'll have Bryan Rose, our friend from Infor, come up and talk about what it's like to be a partner, what they did to maximize their engagement with us. Real quick on the content, this isn't a session on why you should partner with AWS. I'm not going to talk about that. It's not a session on how to make margin with AWS as a partner. Those are great conversations. I'd love to have them with you. Really what we're going to focus on for the next 15 minutes or so is, for those of you that have decided to partner with us, how do you get the most out of the resources we have and we bring to bear in the program? As Josh mentioned, we really separate the world into two buckets, and we're now going to talk about the one I care about most. Here's a slide full of logos. This slide helps just demonstrate the breadth of the ecosystem. We can't fit the thousands of logos on this slide that we carry in the program, so if I've forgotten the logo of your company and you're a partner, please don't be mad. But we've got the big guys, as you can see, as well as we love working with the disruptors as well, the folks that are helping move the industry along and solve customer problems in new ways. All right, so how do you engage with AWS as a partner? There's really 4 bodies of work. This slide is conveniently arranged into 4 rectangles. I'm going to talk through the engagement, and then I'm going to talk through best practices aligned to that engagement. All right, so starting at the top left is really where a lot of the meat comes on the technical enablement. I'm not smart enough to lead this, but we've got other humans that go deep in security, deep in software as a service architecture, operating system, lots and lots of different categories. These folks are here to help you architect your solutions, regardless of deployment model, to run on AWS. So there's some outputs here from the enablement, and those are generally assets that help customers be successful. So those could be sizing guidelines and reference architectures, CloudFormation templates, resources to help you scale and help customers have the best experience possible on AWS. There are also great resources for helping sort through the roadmap updates. You see on the slides, this pace of innovation is astounding. I have a hard time keeping up with our stuff. I imagine it's challenging for partners. The solution architects, because they know your infrastructure and your architecture, they can present proactively the bits that are relevant, new instance types that are coming, new data services that are coming, et cetera. All right, let's move clockwise over to business model enablement. Super interesting area. We work with partners really to help them think creatively about how to price their offerings. And when you think about the cloud, what's interesting about AWS is deploying your application on a new form of infrastructure can offer opportunities to instrument that application in new ways. If you instrument your application, you can then learn how your customers interact with the application, how much they're using, when they're using it, and sometimes, more importantly, when they're not using it. In short, it gives you an opportunity to measure derived value. Now, most people will price their software based on derived value from customers. So we have a really interesting opportunity to sit down together and talk about, what if you price based on bandwidth? What if you priced based on hours of the machine that's running that software? So really an interesting opportunity to innovate on the business side, which is fun. Not everybody takes us up on this. We're equally happy to stay out of your way if you've decided that perpetual will live on for the rest of time. Okay, still going clockwise down to support. It seems like an obvious thing to do, but it's a super critical one. What happens when a customer calls? Customer service answers the phone. Hello, how can I help you? And the customer says, hey, I'm running this application. It's the end of the quarter. I've got to get my financials done. It's not responding the way I thought it would. Customer service rep asks, okay, well, what's your hardware configuration? Customer says, oh, I'm on an M24 XL and I'm using EBS with provisioned IOPS. What the customer service rep says after that is super important, right? We don't want them to be surprised and say, excuse me, was that a t-shirt size? What are you doing? You should be running on big blade servers with a SAN down just next to it. So we need to have the conversation. What will happen when customers call? What will we tell them? And how will we handle those support cases? Equally important, once you've decided, maybe we do some certification and testing of the application, is to make those statements known. Don't hide them in the deep, dark corner behind your support portal. Let's do a blog post. Let's get it out there so that folks aren't surprised. Okay, last big bucket of work is joint go-to-market. This is where my team spends the majority of their time. That first bullet is programs with an exclamation, so you know they're exciting programs. They're so exciting, in fact, I'm going to spend a few minutes going through those slides. Each one of these could be its own session. In fact, things like Marketplace have their own session. I'm really going to give a high-level flyby of some of the things you could take advantage of, and we can drill in later. But this is all common sense, right? We understand that when you win, we win. If you deploy more software with customers, either bring your own license or software as a service that's running on AWS, we win together. So we only win when you win. We both win when the customer wins. So we're happy to invest time and energy to get you more demand, to get you qualified leads, and help you win in the field. All right, best practices. I promised we would follow the same format. All right, so again, starting with technical enablement. This seems obvious, but there's a real strong demand for the resources we have. Our technical enablement resources are highly valued resources. So I'd encourage you, A, make sure you've got someone on your side who's really motivated to work closely with them. Goal them on the launch of the product, certified on AWS. Have someone who's running point. And then prioritize, because if you come with a laundry list of questions, we'd love to answer them all, but the reality is if you come with 3, we'll probably have a better chance of making quick progress, and then we can work through the rest on an ongoing basis. So basic common sense, but important to do. The last bullet, maybe the most important, is please talk to us early on. If you come to us the day before launch and say, hey, Scott, can we do just a quick review of architecture? We're launching tomorrow. It's a big production SaaS application. Just want to make sure that it's secure. We'll talk to you, but the chance that we're going to materially change your architecture in 24 hours is pretty low, right? So talk to us early. Let us know what you want to build, and that gives us an opportunity to share what we've seen. We do this all day, every day. On the business model side, a couple points to hit here. The first is, I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. I don't know the strategy that you're employing to grow revenue, but you should tell us. Are you trying to get in new geographies? Are you trying to expand your footprint in existing accounts? Are you going after a new segment of the market with a product, with a new delivery model? Could be any of those things, right? But you need to tell us, because that's going to inform how we do the joint go-to-market. It's really important that we're open and talk about these things. The other, I'm going to jump to the last bullet, which is one size does not fit all. So we have these traps where folks will say, my sales guys are used to perpetual. My channel's used to selling perpetual licenses. So I can, anything but perpetual, off the table. Can't do it. People will be upset with me. Look, the reality is we're not asking you to leave your old business model behind. We're asking you to think about how could we augment? Could we create a new channel like our friends Jaspersoft did with Marketplace? They have a utility offering in Marketplace. You can spin up BI server on an hourly basis. And for them, this is a self-service, low-touch, low-cost-to-sale channel, servicing a different caliber of customer. You're not going to find GE going to Marketplace, spinning up thousands and thousands of BI nodes on an hourly basis. They're going to call a sales rep, and he'll show up, and they'll talk about pricing, and everyone will be happy. So it's not all or nothing. It's not one size fits all. So experiment and think creatively. Flipping down to support. there are two conversations to have on support. One we talked about on the last slide is how do you talk to your customers about the thing we built together, right? So ultimately, we want to bring solutions to market. Your applications are what make our infrastructure interesting. Servers by the hour, turns out, not super interesting all by themselves. So we build the solution together. We want to bring it to market. Well, we need to tell customers what they're going to get. Is there a support matrix we can publish? Let's make some noise about it. The other half of the conversation, and this is mostly important for the software as a service folks, but also important for the traditional deployment. We have an amazing team of very, very technical and responsive folks in our premium support organization. I'm not a sales guy. I don't have a quota. The support people didn't beg me to say this. The reality is I've worked with a ton of partners, and those that know and love their technical account manager, which is the human you get when you sign up for enterprise support, are the ones who are most successful. You can deliver a higher level of service to your customers if you have a close relationship with us on the operations side. So if you haven't looked at our support offerings, I suggest you do that. And the last one is on go-to-market. The first couple bullets align perfectly to the technical enablement because they make sense. But I want to talk about this frustration-free thing. That logo you see I stole from our retail business. So Amazon on the retail side has this concept of certified frustration-free packaging. So I have a small child, I have a 4-year-old son. If you order a toy and you open the box and the toy is in a plastic clamshell that takes some sort of like garden shears to open, and then there's twisty ties that were applied by a machine, and you can't tell clockwise, I don't know which is, the scissors won't cut them. By the end of the time, a 4-year-old has lost interest. Like, this toy's not interesting. I'm moving on. It's super frustrating. We shouldn't add friction to the process, right? The same is true on the software side. So I should say the whole point of frustration-free, as you can guess, is no clamshells, no twisty ties. It's certified. So the same is true on the solution side. Okay, so we're going to bring the solution to market. We shouldn't make it hard for customers to procure. We shouldn't make it hard for them to configure. The fulfillment and implementation should be packaged so they can consume it. This is a concept that is often overlooked. We get really excited about the integrations we do. We get really excited about the technology, but we can't forget about how do we get this to customers in a low friction way. Okay, back to remember, exciting programs. I have about 5 minutes left, and there's going to be one screenshot per bullet, so bear with me. First, the APN. Everyone talks about APN. The reality is every technology company has a partner program. Every partner program has a portal, and this is what our portal looks like. So what's interesting about our portal is that we're spending a ton of energy investing in content, investing in campaigns that you can run in a self-service manner, technical webinars that you can play on demand, access to training. There's a ton of tools and resources there for the taking, and I think it's an underutilized resource. So I put this title in jest. If you haven't seen it before, then I'm hoping you're not a partner yet. If you're a partner, this should look familiar. If it doesn't, please log in and check it out, and it will change and improve and evolve over time. We're putting a lot of energy into the APN portal. All right. Test Drive. Test Drive is a really interesting program we built about 1.5 years ago. We built it because people asked for it. We shouldn't, again, going back to the packaging conversation, shouldn't be hard for people to experience your software running on AWS. We should want that to be easy. It makes it tangible for them. So what Test Drive is, it's a disposable compute environment. It's fully configured, automated provisioning of a time-delimited virtual lab, if you will. So we have hundreds of these today across a number of different categories, built both by ISVs as well as by consulting partners. And there's no AWS account required. A human comes, they sign in, they register, right? So at some point you'll get a qualified lead. Somebody actually bothered to launch your software on our platform. So it's a great way to incubate folks who are interested and follow up with them. We've got a full program baked around this. If you haven't heard about it yet, try it out. Launch somebody else's Test Drive and see what the experience is like. It's pretty powerful. Marketplace, the folks who were in the earlier session have seen this. So presumably once people have tried it, they want to continue along the journey with launching software on AWS. This is our storefront for software that runs on our platform. And it's really designed to help software be easily discoverable and deployed into the customer's AWS account. So there's a collection of software packages today. You can see the menu on the left across a number of different categories. This count of listings is always expanding. And for those of you who are looking for new paths to market with a lower cost of sale, or want to experiment with different pricing models, really interesting place to experiment. Other partners are using this as the place where sales folks send customers to fulfill software because they believe it provides a better experience from the moment when you say, I want this thing, to the moment when it's running in your account. 2 bullets left. Free trials. You're probably wondering, well, you talk about test drive, now you're talking about free trials. I don't get it. They're actually different. Free trials are fulfilled through Marketplace. They're slightly different in that you need an AWS account. This is an opportunity for a software provider to say, I'm willing to give away my software for some period of time that you decide, so that people can go a little bit farther with it. They make it their own, right? They're putting their data now into the system. They can show their boss, look what I built, isn't this cool? And after the free trial period ends, the meter starts running, we charge them and send you a check at the end of the month. So free trials are new and interesting. Again, great way to experiment, trying to gain some new customers. And the last one is Competencies. This is a program that's really designed for consulting partners. It's effectively a branding program to help customers find consulting partners that have an area of expertise that they care about. I encourage our technology partners to look at the list. Does your software align with competencies that we're actively promoting? We're putting a lot of energy around driving business in these areas. We have a lot of investment around training in these areas, and you can help us. If you have a software package that aligns with big data, as an example, we should know about it. We should be mapping your consulting partner ecosystem and ours. We should be thinking about how do we deliver training of your software to those same consulting partners who have earned the competency. So it's just another way to get a little bit extra leverage out of the partnership. Okay, with that, hopefully you all made it to the keynote this morning. It was a packed room, lots of announcements, and a wonderful presentation by Charles Phillips, the CEO of Infor, talking about their commitment with AWS. It's been a wonderful relationship built over a number of years. I'm very happy to invite Bryan Rose, Senior Vice President of Infor Labs.
Thank you, Scott. No, thank you, Scott. Today's been a very exciting day for Infor. And the one thing I just want to note, that it actually did take a number of years to finally reach this point. And we had a great relationship and partnership with Amazon to get here. And it was not only teaming from a technology perspective, but also from a go-to-market perspective. Infor has over 70,000 customers, 13,000 employees. Our main market was an enterprise resource planning market. So it was going after the enterprise. It is thinking big. What we needed to do, and although we have quite a bit of credibility in the cloud with over 2,000 customers, we had quite a transformation, though, to now how do we migrate our enterprise customers over into the cloud? We had to build actually many services from a technology perspective, and when you get right down to it, we had to be quite disruptive. We had spent a number of years actually reinventing what enterprise software looks like. We had to include social. We had to look at mobile. You have to look at analytics. And you have to obviously look at it's all going to the cloud. You know, Gartner recently had a survey, and they said that in the next 5 years, 47% of all the enterprise ERP solutions will be moving to the cloud. Today, it's very small. I will tell you from what I see that accelerating significantly. And we see that we can be quite disruptive to the market by providing a new solution that it really comes from one unified provider. And we announced this morning, hopefully everyone got to see our CEO, Charles Phillips, announce Cloud Suite. And with Cloud Suite, that is an end-to-end industry solution. And we're doing it for multiple industries. We're doing it for healthcare. We're also, Jeff, public sector. We recently had a very significant win due to AWS in the public sector. And, you know, aerospace, defense, and automotive. And all of it has really been truly enabled by the partnership with AWS. From first, let me hit on a technical perspective. Well, it was very complementary. We provided the deep microvertical functionality We provided the core financials. We provided actually the customer base that is there. We were able to take advantage of all of the web services. Amazon is certainly more than an infrastructure provider. Everyone knows the layers of services that are provided, and we were able to take advantage of it. And take advantage of it not only to provide our solutions, but to provide services for our customers and our partners. One of the things I just wanted to show you is we actually built our own portal. And this is sitting on top of many of the Amazon web services. And this allows customers to provision, to monitor, to actually manage their environments. And not only our customers, but also our partners. We need our partners to get access to our solutions. They need to gain the expertise. And this was one way, simply from a technology perspective, that we're able to leverage many of the services that AWS has to offer. And not only is it from a technology perspective, but also from a go-to-market perspective. Many of the best practices that Scott just mentioned, he brought those to the table for us, along with our alliance team. They showed us some of the ways that what is the best way to go to market? How do we reprice? How do we transform our practice and our business to go from mainly an on-premise to a cloud? And it's a change for our sales force. It is a change for our customers. And certainly, there's many things from a go-to-market perspective that is required. And I certainly would highly recommend working with Scott and his team to go through it. Today was the culmination probably of about 2 years of work from a technology perspective, a very quick, probably 6 months of work from a go-to-market perspective. And we're very proud to be working with Amazon. We see this as a long-term relationship, and now we're certainly all in the cloud. If you do have any questions about the partnership, we have learned a lot over the last few years. I'd certainly be glad to talk to anyone. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Good news. We're done. Thanks for hanging in there. Next steps, please grab any of us if you have questions. We'll be at the networking reception. Log into the APN if you haven't done it, and try out some of the exciting programs. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.